calling all instructional coaches, curriculum specialists, teachers on special assignment, or whatever they call you. I'm Matteo Souza.
And I'm Katie Ritter. As instructional coaches, we are often responsible for our own professional learning and can sometimes feel pretty isolated in our role.
That's why we're here, bridging the gap with a wealth of tips, tricks, and building a community of coaches.
So hit the restart button with us.
Recharge your coaching batteries.
And hopefully you'll leave feeling just a little bit less on your own coaching island.
Welcome back, dear listeners. Welcome back to Restart Recharge. I want to start off with a quick question. Are you the kind of teacher that spends way too much time flipping back and forth between two fonts until you find the right one? Have you looked at a poster and you just thought to yourself, I don't like it, and I don't know why? But you look at graphic design with a different eye. Today, we're joined by a former teacher that has joined our team as an instructional design coach, and we're going to learn all kinds of different things that you can include when you think about graphic design and if you're supporting your teachers with graphic design activities. But before we get started with that, welcome back to my co-host today.
Hey, everyone.
Selena's back. Selena's joining us for another episode. Selena, how's life going?
It's going well. We're in the beginning stages of the school year, cruising through.
Yeah.
Looking for some fun stuff to incorporate, so I'm excited for our guest that we're going to be talking with today.
For sure. Would you like to introduce our guest today?
Sure. So our guest today is our very own Grace Brown. She's an instructional design coach here at Forward Edge. She was a 9th through 12th English teacher for 11 years before transitioning into this role. And during her tenure as a classroom teacher, Grace had the opportunity to lead curriculum development teams and participate in district level development of scope and sequence. Grace also works with Canva as a part of their Edu creative content program, developing educational templates for the platform. She loves working alongside teachers to develop engaging and rigorous learning materials. And when not at work, Grace enjoys reading, running, and traveling. I love that for her.
Reading, running, trip. Welcome, Grace.
Welcome, Grace.
Hi.
Grace, thank you so much for joining us. So, Grace, we wanted to pick your brain a little bit about graphic design. You are our pro when it comes down to graphic design. And so we had a couple questions for you, but you started as a teacher. And we'd like to know, how did you get started? I mean, like, you're a teacher, but you got really into graphic design. Were you obsessed with fonts or with shapes, colors? What got you into this mess?
Yeah. No, I think it started like really small. Being a teacher, like starting in 2012, I experienced a lot of different ways to deliver curriculum, right? I was at schools, like in the very first part of my career, it was the classic worksheet, passing out, collecting, binder organization. And then, as I'm moving, as things are progressing, my next job, it was more Google Classroom, more digital. And every time that changes, you do rethink about your delivery. You rethink, how am I, sharing my lesson materials? At my last job, I basically had a paperless classroom. And as an English teacher, that's like a huge accomplishment. I got many minutes of my life back from the copy machine. But when I made that switch, it then opens more possibilities for how my lessons could look and how I could deliver materials, like learning materials. So it started because I was really frustrated with the formatting tools with the tools that I was using. Like, I just wanted to create a text box, or like just needed the table to go in a certain place, but it wouldn't do it. Or like trying to put an image in a worksheet and it sends the whole thing flying. And I follow teachers on Instagram, or like using Teachers Pay Teachers, and I'm looking at their materials and I'm like, I want mine to look like that. Like, why can't mine look like that? And that's how I started. I just like made an account with Canva. They have free accounts for educators. So if you're an educator and you don't have a free account, you need to do that today. And it literally started so small in just changing worksheets that I already had and elevating those materials and actually then making them look the way that I'd always wanted them to look. So that's really how it started.
Interesting. Do you consider yourself a visual learner yourself?
Yes, I consider myself someone who's really distracted by poorly designed things. So
Me too.
I definitely think I'm visual in and can kinetic. So I want to see it. I want to see the model of what you want me to do, and then I maybe even want to watch someone do it or have someone walk through it with me the first time. But as a teacher, sometimes teachers and PDs, we can be, I know, I'll speak for myself. When I was a teacher in a PD session, I was sometimes the worst student. And it was because if the PowerPoint is distracting or the materials are poor, I'm really fixated on that as opposed to the content that they're trying to teach me. And so, yeah, I think that definitely was motivated. It's just not inspiring if I'm looking at a worksheet that I made and I'm handing it to my students and it's just like a line of text, a number, a line of text, a number, all the way down. The questions may be really great, but no one's excited to work with that material.
Yeah, I agree with that. I personally, I think of myself as a visual learner, and
Mhm.
whenever I would see something that is just not designed well, like again, the questions might be awesome, but the way that it's presented, the way it's even spaced, all that stuff can be distracting. And I think that's a
Mhm.
big part for a lot of students that easily can get distracted, right? So,
Yeah.
especially if you have an all digital classroom, right, then you have to design everything and it needs to be
Mhm.
somewhat engaging. What are some of the things you learned along, maybe like two or three things that you learned along the way that make a better design than,
Yeah.
but that will not distract, right?
Mhm. I mean, number 1, I think less is more, especially, like, when I started, I discovered that I was a person who would absolutely spend way too much time on, like, the minute details of a design because I found it really fun, and again, it's like opening a toy box, right? Like, if you've been limited for so long and then you're given all of these tools and really the possibilities are endless, I'm like, "Oh, what does that do? What does that do? Oh, they have this cute little sticker," but that doesn't mean it's better. Um, and there's that fine line. So I think less is more is something I had to learn the hard way, and not just because of time, because that was taking up I mean, teachers do not have a lot of time. So that was taking up valuable time that wasn't being spent on like the pedagogical stuff. I was making maybe design choices that weren't aligned pedagogically with what I was doing in a classroom. And so reminding myself of what is the intent of this material? What do I need it to do? And is this thing that I'm spending like 30 minutes looking for the perfect sticker or the perfect like doodle, is that enhancing that? Or should I be spending that time elsewhere? So less is more. That was a hard one to learn. And kind of less is more part 2 is text on the screen or like text in a presentation, text on a worksheet. This kind of falls into like things that I get distracted by, or like things if I'm watching a presentation that I notice now a lot more. I had to learn how to redesign my materials so that they partnered with what I was teaching. And that meant sometimes taking the text away from the screen. So I think that was something I learned as well.
Yeah, I think the realization of like sometimes there is an overload of information being given to our
Mhm,
participants, to our students, either way, right? And I
mhm,
think breaking it down and really just condensing into the most important components, it's not just good design thinking, but it's good
mhm.
pedagogy, right? It's good teaching, it's
Yeah.
good conveying of information. Yeah,
Mhm,
that's a great
mhm.
point. I also always think that one of the things I see people make mistakes with, the most common thing that I also made a mistake with is like contrast, especially from an accessibility standpoint.
Yes.
I made that mistake plenty of times myself, right? Where
Mhm.
I just didn't have good enough contrast and you couldn't read the text. Even
Mhm.
if it's designed for you to not read it, it should still be somewhat readable. And I
Yes.
it's a hard lesson to learn, especially if you are so proud of your design.
You don't wanna change it? You're like,
No,
"Oh, but it's so pretty."
it looks so good. Yeah, but nobody can read it, Mateus.
Yeah.
Got that
Mhm.
message a couple of times.
Yeah, I think the accessibility is huge just from how much information is on a screen and that color contrast, because I think about, like, font size. People underestimate how big the font should be for people to read it. We really have to think about ourselves as, like, sitting in the back of an auditorium or sitting at the back of a conference presentation at the back of the room. This might help you get less text on the screen because it's probably small so that you can fit everything on there. And it's like, well, it doesn't all need to be on there because if your attendees, let's say you're giving a conference presentation or you're running a PD, Or if you're a teacher and you're teaching a classroom full of 30 students, 30 plus students, they can't be so focused on trying to decipher what is on the screen or reading what is on the screen that then they lose their attention on you. Even if your contrast is right, even if the design is sleek and is supportive of what you're saying, but you've got a full paragraph up there, one, as a speaker, you're going to be more likely to just start reading from the screen, which is poor public speaking. And I know that at conferences, attendees want those materials to reference later because you're just getting so much information, you can't process it. But then I think this is also where graphic design or just tech can come in handy anyway. Your presentation slides don't have to be the notes that you share with your attendees. You can make a slide deck or a Canva presentation that does have chock full of like text and speaker notes and all of those things that doesn't get shown to your audience, but is then shared on a drive or something like that. So I think making those distinctions is a really important thing.
That's a good point, especially as someone like I always feel like I want to get all that info out, and so I
Mhm.
do fall sometimes to the category of wanting to put a full paragraph in, partially because I want people to understand there's a lot of work in here, right? But
Yeah.
at the same time, I didn't think about this. You could just offer a second version or another document of sorts that could have all that
Mhm.
information. That's a good point. That would make me
Yeah.
happy because then I feel like I was fully heard.
Exactly.
And I know I feel like I work with a lot of teachers too, just going back to what you were talking about with teachers pay teachers
Mhm.
and just finding resources that are accessible. And sometimes I know I work with teachers that don't have time to
Yeah.
put some of this together, or there if there's any listeners that are like, I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, how do I fix a contrast?
Mm.
If you were to give someone a why, what would you tell people? How could they incorporate design activities into classrooms, or why
Mhm.
should they go
Mhm.
about creating their own resources?
Yeah. The time thing is so crucial, but I think in terms of accessibility, I think now there are so many more tools that are built in to help because I don't know I don't know everything. Period. Full stop, right?
It's always a good
And
thing. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's
yeah.
shows self-reflection. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know everything
Put that
either.
out there. I
No
know
one
it's
knows.
surprising, right? Surprising to hear. I can't be expected to know the best way to make every single presentation accessible for every single person, right? But Canva now has options where you can check your design for accessibility and it will kind of run and it will give you options. I know that other tools have, like Chrome has accessibility tools like built in. And so it's not something that then teachers have to stress about, like, oh, I have to go and do research and learn about this. And then, these programs really are working to make creating accessible designs easier so that more accessible designs are created. I think it's kind of that group effort. I think though, if I'm convincing a teacher, and I just ran a session, so I just had this all worked up. If I'm convincing a teacher of why should they start rethinking or redesigning materials, maybe materials that they've made or like they've used for a decade, right? When we rethink design, we're also rethinking how we're engaging with that material. I spoke to this a little bit earlier, but I'll just use an example from my own classroom. I wanted to do a lesson about the significance of setting in a class. And so students were reading different novels, and I wanted them to really think about how setting can be its own character, its own piece. That's also a standard. So I'm trying to keep myself aligned. I used to have a very straightforward worksheet where it's numbers 1 through 5, 1 through 10, questions where the students would have to write incomplete sentences, use text for support, and hand it in or print it in. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But as I had freedom to express myself differently, I started to think, okay, well, what if they also had freedom to express themselves differently? And so then that turned into students, one, creating their own Canva presentations, using Canva themselves to play with the elements and tools to actually create an image or create a map or create this thing that then reflects better what they understood the setting to be. I had students use a tool called ThingLink, and that is a super cool tool where they were able to take a map and then make that map immersive in many ways. And I even included like a makerspace option and a teacher who was willing to work with students. And so design in that way, it turned into a project where students had multiple ways to complete the assignment and allowed them to communicate their learning in a way that made sense to them. So it was more engaging and then more fun to grade. I can't be the only one who was tired of grading the same worksheet over and over again. And this was just way more fun to do.
Yeah, I feel like that would be such an inspirational part to tell any teacher. This is a great way to engage your students and also yourself. You're creating that connection outside of the worksheet itself, creating that bond with how that student's thinking just
Mm-hmm.
from what you created and allowing them to think through your creation. I love that so
Yeah.
much.
And you create ownership, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Oh, yeah.
students then have something that they've created themselves that they are more proud of. I think, especially in times of AI, not to get
Yeah.
this in that direction, but in
Mm.
times where we're talking about, ownership of the
Mhm.
materials of the students, what they're producing, that is something that you can get them easily invested in.
I think that's the other thing I would say to teachers. Another assignment that I did, I adapted a literary field guide from Rebecca Odell. It's a great like resource and it's a vocabulary lesson and students essentially were becoming researchers of a vocabulary word of their own choice and then they were going to make a field guide page. Some students chose to do that. There were many ways they could submit it, but some students chose to do that in Canva. And I know that a lot of times when we talk about design, people get fixated on the like, it's just a way to make things prettier. And for some reason, that feels like not a good enough reason for them to use it. Like, oh, I don't care about if it's pretty, or like that doesn't matter for, again, the curriculum, the content, the knowledge. This is where I would push back against that. So, students who were using Canva, I saw the level of pride that they were taking in their work. Again, because they were now given this toy box of tools to play with and to hear them be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I can do that. Look at this." They were one showing each other the work that they were creating in class. But then when on the day that it was due, they would come in and be like, Ms. Brown, I can't wait for you to see my literary field guide. Like you're really going to like it. This one's really cool. I'm really proud of it. And so that matters. Like that absolutely matters. And I think can expose students one to the confidence in their own skills and maybe something they've not explored before. But then there is more alignment with content because let's say a student was researching a word that had a sad connotation. What I heard and saw them do when you have like these infinite resources, right? This kind of, again, I'm going to keep using that word, giant toolbox of things to choose from. They're having to make choices that align with the meaning of their word. And so everything from the font, the color, the elements that they were using, the way it was structured on the page, they were taking into consideration readability. One, how did it look for me? Could I read what they were turning in? But then this whole piece was reflective of the word that they had researched. And to me, that is deeper level learning. Like that student is going to remember because they spent a lot of time then thinking about what color fits the type of sadness that this word means. Like what font reflects the definition here. And I think that's deeper learning.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point for sure. And it reminded me of another activity I saw where I know it doesn't seem like graphic design or anything like that could be used with things like data, for example, but I
Oh
saw
yeah.
this really cool activity. I think it was one of the EDU protocols where students would be collecting data first in a shared Excel spreadsheet about a particular topic, and they would just collect all of the numbers and
Mm.
some quick little description of it. But then everybody could pull from this to create a infographic. And I think that the idea of not only finding all of that data, which is really, really important, right? But then interacting with it in a way that is very visual and very much focused on conveying information rather than just reading it.
Mhm.
That's another great opportunity. I think just like you said, you get this buy-in, you get this student involvement that is really excited to share what they created. That's the best possible outcome.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So now we're going to take a commercial break. Thank you so much, Grace, for sharing so far.
Looking for a program that reaches all teachers and learning new tools to integrate in their lessons? Edu Badges is the answer. Edu is an anytime, anywhere badging program that is designed to take bite-sized tools for instruction and teach teachers how to use them. Edu has received the ISTE Seal of Alignment for educator standards, and each badge in our expanding library is aligned to the ISTE standards and the SAMR model. Learn more about the program that teachers call addicting at forward-edge.net/edubadges.
Unlock the full potential of instructional coaching with Forward Edge, your partner in professional growth. Instructional coaches play a vital role in supporting teachers, students, and administrators across the district, and research consistently highlights coaching as a powerful catalyst for improved teacher instruction and enhanced student achievement. But here's the question: who's supporting the coach? Enter Forward Edge, your dedicated ally in professional development. Our flexible mentorship options, recognized by the ISTE Seal of Alignment, are tailored to meet your unique needs as an instructional coach. So ready to elevate your coaching journey? Visit forward-edge.net to explore how we can empower you with the knowledge and support you need. Start your journey with us today.
Welcome back to Restore Recharge from our break. We are still here with Grace Brown, talking all things design, figuring out what we can give our coaches to take back to the districts and how to support them and their students' design skills. So let's talk a little bit more specific about, like, how do I get, as a coach, other teachers excited to incorporate that? Let's give them the easiest tools. Let's give them some ideas, some inspiration. Let's say I'm a teacher that is really excited, that wants to do graphic design with my students, but I don't even know how to start, how to come up with it. Grace, what advice would you give me? How would you get me started as a coach?
Yeah. As a coach, when I would start, if you don't have a login, I would definitely start there. And again, hitting on that free educator account. Educators get access to all of the all of the premium tools. I don't think enough educators know about this. And so I have worked with a couple of teachers who have made a personal account because maybe they did, they made an invitation for a birthday or baby shower or something. And then in playing with it, though, they felt limited because they just had the free version. So then they don't see the value of, like, oh, well, this can't do what I want it to do anyway. And I'm like, no. Get in your educator, use your school account, get into the educator account, and then you're really going to see what it can do for you. If I'm working with a teacher who's never used it before, directing them towards templates. One, I think I would identify one area that they want to explore. So is it just engaging presentations? Do we want to start just by elevating your class notes? Maybe they're like me and you want to elevate your worksheets. I mean, you're kind of sick of how they're looking, or you see other teachers and you want to model that a little bit more. Direct them to Canva's template resources or template library. As an edu creator, I am part of that process. I'm part of the building of that template library, but I know how seriously Canva takes building their resources. It's a lot of times on a template, whether, maybe that's on, you get a template from Etsy or a template somewhere else on Canva that's not education based, you're going to get that really pretty design, but it's going to be lorem ipsum text filler. Like, you've got to put in all the text. Canva for Education is committed to also creating actual content in their templates. Like, when I make a template, I am not allowed to simply be like, title here, enter text here, text filler, I am creating a lesson that I would use in my classroom, and I'm making it available for everyone for free. These templates are free. And so you could, in a pinch, and I think this is really what they want to help with teachers, especially teachers who are overwhelmed by this design idea or idea of graphic design. You don't have to do it. You can search your subject, grade, the type of media that you want, and even sometimes using those specific keywords to the actual lesson or skill that you're trying to teach. And there will be something. There will be something that you could either, hopefully, if we're really lucky, immediately put into your classroom, so saving you a ton of time, or something that you're like, I need to maybe add a slide or change this just a little bit, tweak it here, but still it's ready to go. And you've still saved a ton of time and you've made progress towards that goal of elevating your design. So, I think a really nervous teacher, I would say rely on the templates, because that's also how you learn. That's how I learned too, is observing. We talked about this earlier. when you observe strong graphic design and start to think to yourself, why does this appeal to me? What are the pieces that make this work, that make this look polished? And how can I mimic that in my own work? And so using those templates is a perfect place to start.
Yeah, and I think it also shows you like the best practices, right? And you'll sometimes you look at a design or something like that, and I think I don't know why I don't like it, but I don't like it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times it's because, color combinations are not the right perfect combo and the spacing is just a little bit off here and there, and you might not
Mm-hmm.
even see it directly, but it makes it look sort of uncomfortable almost for some
Yeah.
reason. And I think a lot of that is, like you said, look at the templates and you'll get this feeling and that eye, and you realize, oh, okay, this is very much like spaced in a certain way, and that makes sort
Mm-hmm.
of sense. What if I want to go in and I want to have students interact with, let's say, Canva, for example? I know it can be pretty intimidating setting up a classroom. Any advice on that front?
Yeah. One, Canva has a lot of resources on their website. When walking teachers through that, you can become a Canva certified educator. And one that is going to walk you through very quickly. It's not an intensive process at all, but it is going to walk you through some design basics, but then also like how to use their platform. So I recently did a session with teachers who were interested in like, how do we assign work in Canva? I want my students to do this thing in Canva. With your school account, one, you can connect it with your LMS. And so that makes it really easy. But you can also add your students into a classroom. And then a lot of the functionality is going to look like LMS, other learning management systems that you're familiar with, where I can share it as an assignment and then make it so that each student gets their own individual copy. Because I think that's the hard part too, sharing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely done this. I know I've worked with other teachers who have done this. You share it, and then all of a sudden you have 25 kids on the same document and it's chaos. That's not always what we want. Sometimes we want that, but not always. And
Yeah.
so the ability to like make a copy so that each student has their own, and then on the teacher side, you see the folder with the student name, and that's automatically shared with you. And you can see that the work that they've done. And so I would say, just like everything, start small. I try to encourage teachers to maybe try something low stakes. I think, yeah, at least for me, when I got really excited about a new curriculum, a new pedagogy thing, a new whatever, I felt the need to like, okay, I'm going to go do this all year. Everything is going to be on this now. And it's like, that's not really how that works. Like what's going to end up happening is you're going to get burnt out and you're not going to try anything new. So if you have like a homeroom or an advisory and you've got a smaller group of kids, and like just sending them maybe something that's like a coloring page or like a make your own postcard or design a classroom stamp, something that's super low stakes that gets everyone working with the tools, takes so much pressure off the kids and yourself. Because anytime we try something new, we know it's going to be stressful that first day. If you are an educator who has access to a coach, reach out to your coach. I've offered this now and have been able to do this now. On the day that we're rolling the new thing or trying Canva for the first time, I'm just in the room. I'm just the extra adult in the room that as hands are shooting up and as we're running into tech problems, which, is inevitable with 25 people trying to do something all at the same time. And that makes it more attainable as well. So I think, again, from a coach's perspective, how do we get teachers to try this? Obviously being available, demonstrating it for them, and then being willing to be in the mess with them as they're trying it.
Being with them in the mess. That's,
Mm-hmm.
I think, the beautiful tagline to our job in general.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, you gave us a lot of great ways to get started. I feel inspired. I don't know about you.
Oh, I'm inspired.
Now I need to go create something right after this.
Yeah.
But for our coaches out there, what would be your top 3 tips when getting their graphic design muscles going?
Yeah. I said this, I think we had like a bingo card for this. I mean, this would be all the squares on the bingo card, is start small. If you are a coach, not only should coaches encourage teachers to start small and teachers should encourage students to start small, but if you are a coach, and this is intimidating to you, because just because we're coaches, again, back to like, I don't know everything. Like, just because we're coaches, it doesn't mean that we're super comfortable with this. Start small and make a goal for yourself. Do I want to elevate my presentations? Do I want to create better learning materials that are more engaging with my teachers? What is it that you want this thing to do? And then just start small. Pick one thing just to play around, and then you will see how quickly, one, you become inspired and how easy it is. Like, it takes that intimidation factor away a little bit. So definitely that's one. I think coaches using graphic design, a tip would be to build your kit, build your brand kit. Whether you do this on Pinterest, I have a Pinterest Canva board for, because even though I really am visually engaged, I am not an artist. And so I get inspired when I see other things that I really like. Remember, as a kid, I don't know. Well, Mateus, I don't know if you ever did this. Celine, I have a feeling maybe you did. But when we would like cut collages out of magazines and like,
Yes.
spend, thank you. I don't, this very
I had,
maybe specific experience.
I had
Um,
a Pinterest. That's about as far as I got.
okay.
Similar.
Um, Cutting, we're kind of back to those days, right? It's going to make your life so much easier in Canva. You can, in fact, like build that brand kit. And then you don't have to, I mean, tell teachers this. You don't have to make those decisions all the time. Like, think coaches, certainly teachers, experience that decision fatigue. Let's take that away. Let's make our lives just a little bit easier. And then it also creates that continuity between your design. So you're going to look more professional, you're going to look more polished. And I think that leads into the last tip, which is about creating trust. And the way that, as a coach, I think that you create trust in specifically graphic design, if we're thinking about elevating our presentations, it's one, you have to model it. You cannot be giving a PD presentation about the importance of engaging presentations, and your presentation is the white basic Google slide with the black basic Google font, and like, that's it. You can't do it. So you need to be walking the walk there. And then I think creating that trust does come in with that building your kit and starting small, right? I think all of those work towards that bigger thing where the teachers feel safe enough to try it. And then they also see the value in it because they see your materials. They see you using this, and that it is more than just making something prettier, but it is changing the way that we think about content and curriculum delivery. And I think that's how we build trust with teachers and really being authentic with what we're working with them in, right? We're back to be in the mess with them. You have to be willing to be in the mess with them, or they're not going to feel safe to try this new thing.
Those are three very well connected points. I think they all really support each other one after another. That's good, and very good best practices, right? Obviously, you need to be walking the walk and like,
Yep.
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, Grace, thank you so much for being with us. I always make it awkward, and I ask my guests if they have anything to brag about, if they want to tell us something that's going on, if they have any cool
Yeah.
projects going on, if there's something they're proud of.
Um, I'm proud of the work that I've done on Edu Creator on my Canva. So I would say, nothing maybe too exciting on the like event space. Although actually that's not entirely true. I will be at a conference, but it's not until like February with one of our other teammates. And so and that's all about Canva. So we've got more content, but I have an Edu Creator page. And a teaching Instagram where I share a lot of my designs. And so if people, again, want to find me and ask me more of these questions, or if they want to see my work and start using it, they're like, all right, she said we could use templates, let's find them. Then I definitely would direct people there. And so on Canva, it's called my shop, it's, you don't pay for anything, is called Teaching with Grace. And so that's where I'm at. That's where you can find me.
Oh, and the Instagram handle you mentioned?
Yeah, on Instagram, I am teaching_with_Ms. Brown, MS, and then my last name Brown. I'll text it to you guys so we can put it in the show notes or something, because that's a lot. But yes, I would love for people to find me there.
Okay, awesome. Can I ask you one last question? I know.
Of course.
Sneak in one more in.
Yeah.
Your biggest graphic design pet peeve?
Oof. Oh my gosh. I think I mean, too much text is a big one. It is a big one, but now I think alignment, you talked about the spacing. It's now like the spacing of the element or the spacing of when someone has like let's say we've got like something in the middle and they've got text like around it, but these two are like this versus like
Uh-huh.
in alignment with each other. I was like, just move it, like just move it a little bit. So that one is surprising where I'm just like push it over, just, that alignment. It's the small details, really.
That's understandable.
For sure. I got asked to give feedback, and then I always find myself just like doing the slightest little adjustments to the boxes, and it's like just line it all up. That's it. And everybody
Yes.
looks at me like, "What are you doing? Like this is just going to make it so much cleaner."
I've zoomed in the presentation to like, 1,000%, just like, like, but it makes a huge difference.
Sure does.
Mhm.
All right, Grace, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you
Yeah.
for giving us all these good tips and pieces of advice. And listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us some feedback. Please leave some comments. And yeah, let us know how we're doing. And if you have any other questions, please let us know and reach out to Grace.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Grace. Thanks for spending time with us today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with an educator friend.
And connect with us on social media at RRCoachCast to let us know what you thought of the episode and what topics you want us to discuss next.
New episodes drop every other Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe to Restart Recharge wherever you listen to podcasts.
So press the restart button.
Recharge your coaching batteries and leave feeling equipped and inspired to coach fearlessly with the Restart Recharge podcast.
A Tech Coach Collective.
Well, hold on a sec. Ready? Welcome back from break. We are still here with Grace Brown. How did I...
You did a little roll on the break. You were like, welcome back from break.
Very
I didn't notice that.
Very fancy.
Okay. Do I keep that?
I know. Ben, if you're watching this,
Yes,
you're
got it.
editing.
Don't allow him to do that. Okay. I thought it was the break between Grace Brown.
Yeah. I think that sound you just wanted to make, like, I wanted it to be like Grace Brown. Like I wanted that to, I want that fancy treatment.
Katie's gonna be so happy that we have our bloopers.